When I was young, I coveted the female body. I wanted to be female. I wanted to look like a woman. I wanted to feel like a woman. And that was expressed a few times in my childhood. As I got older and I reached my teenage years, I experienced a lot of expressions of men looking at me and telling me that I wasn't a man, that I wasn't masculine enough, that I didn't look like a man, that I didn't have the broad shoulders. This carried on into my adulthood, and the frustration of feeling not like a man really led me down a strange path. That path was, I realized that I was miserable as a man, and if I lived as a woman, perhaps things would change. And so I decided to become a pre-op transsexual woman. I was born a boy, and I lived as a woman for a number of years.
What does pre-op mean?
Pre-op is transsexuals who have not had the sexual reassignment surgery.
So you lived, what was the name you chose for your new identity?
Janine.
So can you say something about that time in your life when you lived as Janine?
I was genuinely happy being Janine. I felt great. I felt like I had an identity. I felt like I had a purpose. I felt included in the LGBT community. It really did meet a lot of the desires and the needs that I had at the time, because in that point in my life, I felt incredibly isolated and I didn't have as much friends as I had before. And so being part of the LGBT community really gave me a sense of belonging. And also the fact that I had an identity. I was a transsexual. That's who I was. And there was also a mixture between the churches that I went to as well too. A lot of the churches had no idea how to interact with anyone that was LGBT. They weren't sure what to do, they weren't sure what to say, they were not sure how to act. And so they ended up doing a lot of cruel things to me or saying cruel things about me.
So what happened? Because something happened, because you're presenting yourself now as John and not as Janine.
What happened was I had a friend who was also a transsexual woman. And the day before her sexual reassignment surgery, she had a breakdown and realized that she wanted to be a man. When I heard that story, I was beginning to look at my own life. Before I even heard about my friend who changed her gender back to being male, I was constantly praying to God and saying, I don't know what to do. I'm doing what I think is right, but I have no idea if it is right for me. And so when I heard this story about my friend transitioning back to being male, I began to look at my own life, and I realized that it wasn't for me. I couldn't do it anymore. I felt like an empty man. It had nothing to do with being a woman. It had everything to do with the fact that I didn't feel masculine. And when I realized that going down the path of becoming a female in society wasn't right for me.
Were there any events that took place that kind of made that absolutely clear for you?
Yes, the fact that praying to God and different things like that really did impact me, because I was kind of in tune with what God was saying to me. In the beginning, God was speaking to me and he was saying that he told me the most important things, that he was never going to leave me, he was never going to forsake me, that he had plans for my life and that I should make plans, but he'll direct my steps. And all those things that I felt God was saying to me really led me to the place I became, because I realized that God was leading me back to being a man. The cool thing was, because of the way the Christians were treating me, when I visited you and your wife and even the people that were in the conference were really respectful, very loving and non-judgmental. You guys welcomed me in with open arms. And that was great to experience, because then that made me trust in you guys more. The conference itself was about reparative therapy for homosexuals. I got the opportunity to talk to men who had different reasons for being homosexual. I remember one guy told me that the reason he was homosexual was because he coveted the male body, and that if he felt that if he had sex with a man, he would have the masculinity that came with male bodies. And that kind of, in my mind, in a very deep part of my mind, I realized that I was the exact same way when it came to females. And there was an incident where during the conference, the main speaker, David Pickup, had left. and you were in the conference, and some homosexual people came into the conference having no idea exactly what was said in the conference, but were incredibly upset by the entire conference itself. So people started to get incredibly aggressive verbally, and they were very upset, and they were hurt people. I mean, they'd gone through a lot of bad things with regards to Christians in Northern Ireland. They were, people tried to do exorcisms on it, they cast them out of churches, they did loads of different things. And I remember hearing this from them. They were saying that these were things that had happened to them. And things kind of got out of hand, and people started getting a little bit angry. And I felt that God was saying, get up and address them, because you're one of them. So I got up and I explained to the people, the homosexuals, I said, I know your pain. I know what it's like to be rejected by Christianity. I know what it's like to be called demon-possessed and disgusting and an abomination, because I went through it myself. And I said, these people who are doing the conference, they're not forcing people to go into therapy for homosexuality. They're offering a service for people who aren't happy. And I was trying to convey to the homosexuals that were there that doesn't a person have a right to actually go and seek help to change their orientation if it's causing them distress? And when they heard that, they settled down and they understood exactly what the conference was about, and peace came over the place. And I remember Andrea, I can't remember her name. What is Andrea's?
Andrea Williams?
Andrea Williams. I remember after that conversation with the homosexuals, she grabbed me by the hands and said, please be a man. You would make an amazing man. You will make an amazing father. Please go back to being a man. And the tears in her face were pouring out. And at the time, I understood what she was saying, but I didn't believe in my own masculinity. And I told her, I know what you're saying. I really appreciate it, but I'm waiting for God to say it to me. And so I left that conference, and a lot of things happened, a lot of things changed, and I was in and out of hospital with my bipolar disorder. But it ultimately came to the end that, yeah, she was right. God wanted me to be a man, and a good man.
And today, how is life for you?
Today it's good. I mean, I feel secure in my masculinity. There are times where I have dreams or thoughts about being female, being Janine, and those thoughts, they come and go. And I think they're probably going to be there for the rest of my life. But at this point in my life, I'm happy being a man for the first time in a long time.
So when those thoughts come, John, how do you manage them? What do you do?
Well, I usually talk to God about it. You know, I said, God, you know, I know that these are desires in my heart. But I remind myself of the other reasons why I became a transsexual woman, which were sexual. I mean, I looked at, because I was exposed to pornography as a young child, one of the reasons I wanted to be female was because in these videos, I saw that women got loads of pleasure. Loads and loads of pleasure, and I wanted that. And that was one of the many reasons why I became female. And so whenever I have those thoughts, I just reevaluate myself and say, okay, why do I want to be back to being a female? Is it because it's an identity? Is it because of being not feeling masculine enough? Or is it a sexual reason? So when I get those thoughts, that's usually what I go through in my head.
John, it seems to me that there are people who go through a journey similar to your own, who may identify as transsexual, that may be very alone in the world. What would you say to them in terms of getting support and help for where they are at the moment?
What I would say to people who identify as being transsexual, who don't necessarily want to be transsexual, would be to go and see therapy. Not just reparative therapy, that people who are trying to change gender orientation, but a therapist who can delve into exactly what are the causes of the desire to change to be a female. I do believe that there are genuine cases of people who are transgender, who there's some sort of chemical thing going on, but I think there's a lot of people out there that are doing it for all the wrong reasons. And when they get to the point where there's no return, they might regret it. So I'd say that people who are identifying as being transsexual, who want help, I would definitely recommend going to see a psychotherapist and work through the issues and find out exactly why those desires are there. And I would also say that it would be great to get friends and family who support you in those endeavors, but also open to the idea of helping them explore exactly what's going on.